Hello, I'm Scott Allen Moffat, the Actor's Dialect Coach, and welcome to my tutorial for a Southern accent. This guide is geared towards teaching actors the basics of the accent. It's undoubtedly one of the most commonly requested accents actors may need to perform, and therefore one of the most valuable. This beginner's guide is meant to serve as a simple jumping off point in your exploration of the accent. But before we begin, let's first explore the history of a Southern accent. First, let's define what exactly we mean by Southern. Generally, boundaries of the southern U.S. include Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Georgia. To a lesser extent, speakers with a southern accent can also be found in Florida, West Virginia, Missouri, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. Historically, many distinct Southern dialects existed in the US, which were widely affected by British, Irish, and Scottish immigrants in the 17th and 18th centuries, as well as by enslaved African Americans. It should be noted, many Black Americans speak with a version of African American Vernacular English, or AAVE, which shares many common features with a Southern accent. Over time, the Southern accent naturally consolidated into a more cohesive sound, though there's still a wide variety of region specific dialects, such as Appalachian English and Cajun English. The amount of people who naturally speak with a Southern accent is steadily declining in modern times. However, it remains an important accent for performers due to the large number of roles requiring some version of it. It's also important to acknowledge the difference between a classic Old South version of the dialect, which is easily identifiable due to its lack of rhoticity or pronunciation of final R sounds. Regardless of region, there are many distinct sounds that are pervasive throughout the South. Those common sounds will be the focus of this tutorial. As an actor, you can easily use the accent outlined in this guide for general auditioning purposes. But as with any accent, once you learn more about your character's background, it's generally a good idea to further investigate the specific sound shifts of their home region. Let's begin by exploring some of the vowel sound shifts that we may hear in a Southern accent. The first vowel that may shift is as in them, which might change to a shorter vowel, I, as in kit. Therefore, the word them may sound like them. It's important to note that this feature, this change, is most prominent when the vowel precedes a nasal consonant, such as or in spelling. Let's try out this sound on an example tongue twister. I'll always be sure to give you some time after I speak it for you to repeat it back. Our tongue twister is, it ended when 20 of them were sent home. This linguistic feature is sometimes called the pin-pen merger, as in this accent, the two words are pronounced the same. Pin, pin. Our next vowel shift deals with the I sound, as in kit, which on its own may be perceived with a noticeable drawl, stretching towards I, kit. Let's try a tongue twister. I saw 6 images of the big ship. The vowel may feel slower, like it's gliding to a weaker position. Try it out in slow motion first, gradually speeding it up. I, 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 kit. Our next vowel shift deals with the sound ah, as in trap, which also gets a little bit of a drawl and stretches out, almost towards I, trap. Our example tongue twister here would sound like, the fat cat had a bath and danced. As with the previous rule, this vowel may feel like it's a little bit of a slower off glide, stretching out the vowel sound. Our next vowel shift deals with as in words like strut, which may stretch and rise a little bit in the mouth towards as in foot. So the word strut may now sound like strut. Our example tongue twister may sound like, my brother stumbled into a clump of shrubs above us. Careful not to overdo this sound shift, as it can feel a little bit overly stereotypical if you do it too much. For our next vowel shift, the sound I, as in price, may lose its off glide, resulting in price. On our example tongue twister, my fine key lime pie was dry. On its own, this vowel sound can sound almost like a breathy sigh. Ah, price. For our last vowel shift, we're dealing with the sound oi, as in choice, which may have a more neutral release at the end, resulting in oi, choice. For example, tongue twister, any noise, a noisy oyster. That's it for our vowel shifts. Now let's talk about some consonant changes. The first of which deals with R sounds that come after a vowel within a word. And those R's may feel a little bit more retracted, a little bit darker, or perhaps even more pronounced. So, may sound more like Our example sentence, George steered his car further than ever before. If you struggle finding this one, think about pulling your tongue back ever so slightly on the R sound, or creating a sort of darker feeling in the mouth. Our next consonant shift happens on the L's, specifically when the L sound is followed by silence or a consonant sound. And instead of producing a traditional L sound in these moments, it may instead produce more of a W sound. So a word like old may sound more like old, old. Let's try it on our tongue twister. The Little Hill's old bell sure is swell. If the L sound is followed in the word or phrase by a vowel sound, it should be pronounced normally. For our last consonant shift, multisyllable words, so words with more than one syllable, that end in ing may drop the G sound altogether. So, for instance, the word ringing might sound like ringin', where that final G is dropped. Notably, one syllable words like ring do not drop the G sound, which would result in rin, I suppose, which doesn't work. Let's try this on our tongue twister. Today, I'm camping, fishing, hiking, and eating. Now let's talk about the musicality of a Southern accent. As with every accent, the variety of music you will hear amongst its speakers will be incredibly varied from person to person. However, there are perhaps a few generalizations we might make about the Southern speaker. Overall, Southerners may speak slightly slower than the average American, which can add to a rather negative stereotype that they are perhaps less intelligent in some way. This is, of course, not true. Rather, Southerners tend to favor lingering in vowel sounds as a means of emphasis. A common adage I like to keep in mind, Southerners may talk a little slower, but they're thinking just as quickly. More so than any other American accent, there is perhaps a greater difference in the pitch play between sexes for Southern speakers. For instance, female speakers are much more likely to feature a higher pitch, especially towards the end of a sentence, which can make everything almost feel like a question. Take the phrase, bless your heart. This simple three syllable phrase can experience a dramatic rising inflection towards the end of it. Bless your heart. Southern men, on the other hand, historically associate a deep register with their masculinity and may feature much less articulation. This often results in an almost mumbled, monotone manner of speaking. Again, these are sweeping generalizations that should be carefully considered and thrown out when appropriate for the character. But sometimes, starting from a place of caricature can provide a nice jumping off point. As with every accent, Southerners have many unique word pronunciations, which don't necessarily fit into any sort of logical set of rules. While it would be impossible to capture all of the unique pronunciations here, these are some of my personal favorites. The word can't may now be pronounced as can't. Thing may be thang. You all famously would be y'all. Guitar might be guitar, and tomato may be tomato. Again, these are just a few unique pronunciations, and I always encourage my actors to keep a running list of new ones that you may hear when listening to your example resources. And of course, this doesn't even account for unique vocabulary or slang that accompanies many and all different dialects of English. Be sure to always do your research when encountering unusual vocabulary in your scripts. Now that I've demonstrated some of the unique one to one sound shifts and musical choices featured in a Southern accent, I'm going to demonstrate it for you on a short monologue from William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of your players do, I'd as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand thus, but use all gently, for in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Be not too tame neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature, for anything so o'erdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is to hold, as 'twere, the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time his form and pressure. The sounds of the American South can hardly be considered uniform, but there are certainly consistent sound changes that are heard in a vast majority of accented Southern speakers. Practice the sound shifts outlined in this starter guide to familiarize yourself with the basics, and when exploring a specific character, be sure to further research the local sounds. Also, be sure to check out some of the links I've provided below to hear the accent demonstrated by native speakers. Thanks for watching.